All right, welcome to our Advocacy in Action event. This is our panel that we're having with our members that are involved in our volunteer opportunities. My name is Greg Saul. I'm Director of Tax Policy at the Ohio Society of CPAs. And so I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves first, give a little bit about their background, and then we'll get into some questions here for them. So Adam, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thanks, Greg. My name is Adam Garn. I'm a senior tax manager with Plant Moran. My focus in the firm is with state and local tax. I've been in state and local tax for the majority of my career. Related to OSCPA, I've been a volunteer for OSCPA for over 10 years, served on a number of different committees, and even was part of the CPA Voice editorial board when that was around. So have been involved heavily in the OSCPA over the course of my career.
All right, Jessie.
Yeah, my name is Jessie Wright. I am a manager with Schrodel, Scullin & Bestick, a CPA firm in Canfield. I primarily specialize in business valuations and employee benefit plan audits at the firm. In addition, I'm also a lecturer at Youngstown State University. I teach primarily financial accounting and then auditing in the undergraduate as well as our Master's of Accountancy program there. I have been involved with the Ohio Society for at least 10 years, probably closer to 15, but I hate to even say that because then I guess my age comes out a little bit, and I know women don't like to share that, but probably much closer to 15 than 10, if I'm being honest. And it's really been such a great opportunity to be involved with the Ohio Society for so long, and I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about that today.
All right, thanks, Jessie. And then Owen?
I guess I'm our industry representative today. Hi, Owen Wiss. I'm currently CFO at Complete General Construction in Columbus, Ohio. I had started my career in public accounting for 8 years, CPA for about 15 now, and I've been volunteering with the society for right around 13, I believe it is, if I counted accurately. I'm sure somebody can do the math in there and figure out how old I am. No longer a young CPA, I guess, anymore. Volunteering with the Ohio Society is something I'm very passionate about and glad to be here to discuss today.
All right, thanks, Owen. Yeah, and I don't think I'm considered young anymore either. So, but one of the things that we wanted to kind of get out of everyone today was you all were younger CPAs when you first got involved with the society, and one of the things, when you first get out of college, I think you're short on all sorts of resources, money, time, and everything. And so, I guess the first question I do want to ask of all three of you is why did you get involved with our volunteer opportunities so early in your career, and what did you get out of it? Because for some reason, all three of you are still involved with us, and you told us how many years you've been serving with us in various different capacities, and we'll get to that in a little bit later. But the first question is why, and then I'll go with you, Owen. So.
Why? At first, it was obviously. Before volunteering, it was just a way to meet other CPAs. I started attending young CPA events when I was living down in Dayton. A few years after starting to attend events where I'd met some great people, I moved up to Columbus and continued on with my career. And a senior manager at the time in my firm come to me and said she was on the executive board at the time and told me that they were going to start building a young CPA board, and asked if I wanted to get involved. I just moved to Columbus. I didn't have a huge network. I'd really left my network behind in Dayton. And to me, it was a great opportunity to meet some other CPAs, expand my network, maybe even possibly meet some mentors. And so I did. I joined the Young CPA board, I think in 2008, and it really kind of took off from there. And it's been a great experience. I've met lots of great people, and what we're here to talk about today, a little bit on the advocacy side, is really what's kept me passionately involved over the last 13 years.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Owen. Jessie?
Yeah, I was introduced to the OSCPA as an undergraduate student at Youngstown State University from our student ambassador at the time. For anyone watching maybe that's not familiar with that program, student ambassadors are accounting majors that are chosen from participating universities based on their academic performance, their outgoing personality, their desire to share with other students about rewarding career opportunities that come with an accounting degree and the benefits of becoming a CPA. This peer-to-peer networking introduced me to the OSCPA and all that it does for its members. And I wanted to be a part of the organization and had the opportunity to actually become the student ambassador at Youngstown State University my senior year. This involvement and connection to the OSCPA opened my eyes to all of the happenings and accomplishments that were happening across the state because of the OSCPA team. And I really wanted to be a part of that. And that's why shortly after graduating, I moved on to being a part of the Young CPA committee like Owen. And I've always just really been impressed by the OSCPA's government relations team and how they can kind of keep a finger on the pulse of the legislative front to protect our interests as CPAs.
All right, thank you, Jessie. And then Adam.
Oh, I'll back up Jessie as well. I mean, so when I first started out just going to OSCPA CPE events and just seeing just the knowledge and that was provided by the government relations folks or some of the other individuals that were at OSCPA, everybody's just so knowledgeable and then friendly within the events, and it just was more of an open environment. And then when YCPA events did start to happen, you did get to meet more people, and you got to meet additional folks that were closer to your age range, and what you were going through at the time. And really just with OSCPA, the number of items and issues that they have going on at any given time, it's always interesting to work with the OSCPA and see and understand from their perspective where they're spending their time. And it's always just fascinating to me how the organization works and how good they are at their job and what it is that they do.
All right, yeah, thanks, Adam. And we're gonna go back to back questions with you here. So the next one is Owen kind of alluded to it. I think the first volunteer opportunity that he did after getting involved, kind of some of the younger stuff, was he was on our executive board. I think like the thought of everybody is like, oh, you'll start out small and work your way up. Well, sometimes you start out big and then you get involved in everything else that we're doing too. Which opportunities have you gotten involved with throughout the years with us?
Sure. So, as I said before, I started out with being on the editorial board of the CPA Voice. That's no longer a volunteer opportunity. Since that point in time, I've served on the State and Local Tax Committee. Currently, I serve as chair of the State and Local Tax Committee and spend a lot of time just discussing legislation and other items with you, Greg, as you know. And then I've also served on the Global Advisory Committee, and that would just be for determining what events could be at different conferences and who should actually participate in those conferences. And lastly, I have spoken at a number of OSCPA conferences and just providing CPE and presenting at those different accounting shows or mega tax or some of the other CPE events that are going on.
Yeah, I mean, and those are all, I would say, volunteer opportunities that we find valuable, like speaking at the events, the CP events. And so it's not just serving on a committee or the executive board or something like that. You can get involved in many different ways. And I mean, as Adam said, like with the SALT committee, a lot of times we tap our members to come down, if they're willing, to come down to the State House and testify on behalf of the Ohio Society, because the legislators see us plenty of times down there, but it's always great when we have members that can come down and testify in person, because you have those personal stories either at your own company or you have a client that's impacted by some piece of legislation that we're working on, and it really supplements the efforts that we have very well that we're trying to do down at the State House. So Jessie, you're up next.
Yeah. Kind of funny story. So I remember sitting in my office before I had my big first volunteer opportunity, and I kept getting these emails about these young CPA happenings all across the state, and they looked so cool. And I was like, how come we're not doing any of these in Youngstown? And so when I went to an employee benefit plan conference, I asked somebody can we get some of these cool young CPA events, like these cool games that they go to and happy hours they're attending, so that that we can do some of them. And they said, well, we would have some, but we don't have anybody who wants to volunteer to kind of maybe, head up or chair a young CPA committee in Youngstown. And I was like, well, you do now. So my first opportunity that I did was I chaired the Youngstown Young CPA Committee, which we planned lots of great networking events for young professionals. I finally got my happy hours and my sporting events. We did some CPE sessions, and we even volunteered and gave back to the community, which was really cool. As a chair of that committee, I had the opportunity to serve on the Ohio Society of CPA's Young CPA Leadership Board. That usually consists of members 35 years old or younger who want to build relationships with others their age in the profession. And it's a great way to engage our younger members. And that position on the Young CPA Leadership Board really helped prepare me for my current role on the executive board, which has been a remarkable experience. I feel like the current members on the executive board are awesome in so many ways. And so it's really just a privilege to be in the same group of them, of past and present board members. So Owen, of course, yourself included in that grouping. And so it's just been a really, really nice and cool opportunity.
Jesse and I have had very similar lines. In fact, Jesse, I think I was chairing the state Young CPA board when we brought you in to form the Youngstown group. I think Jesse and I have had very similar lines. As I mentioned earlier, at the request of a coworker, I joined the Young CPA board at its founding, and eventually worked up I sat as Columbus chair for a while, and eventually as the state chair on that board. Jesse explained all the great things that we did while we were there, and continue to this day. I will note, you don't have to be under 35 to come to one of their events. So, don't use that as a drawing line. I think I went well into my late 30s. I'll admit, since turning 40, I haven't been to one yet, but that's just because COVID slowed everything down. From there, transitioned into the executive board. That was such a great experience. I met some people on that board that I consider trusted business advisors that I still pick up and call today. And that doesn't even go to talk about all the things I felt like we accomplished during my 5 years on the executive board. I rolled off there, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and then have recently joined the PAC board, which is the Political Action Committee, which really is responsible for mainly Barb and Greg moving our Ohio Society's legislative agenda forward. Just getting started there, so I can't talk too much about it, but very much looking forward to the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Owen and Jesse. And to go back to what Jesse had talked about, we're hoping to get back to those in-person events. We're located in Columbus, but we liked having those events all around the state, going to the happy hours and the baseball games and the hockey games, and having those events for our members. And we're looking forward to getting back to that. But I do think that the one thing that was beneficial from having, moving to a virtual world is more members were able to get involved in the process. Jesse, we were talking to you earlier about, sometimes you have to debate, because it's a 3-hour drive from Youngstown to Columbus and 3 hours back, and that takes up 6 hours of your day just driving. And now that we have the virtual option, you can sign on in your office. It looks like you're in your office, and then sign off, and that was your time commitment for the day. And I really do think we're going to move to more of a hybrid model with our committees. And so those that want to drive to Columbus will have an in-person meeting, but we'll have the hybrid option as well, where members around the state would be able to join in virtually as well. And so I really think it's really going to broaden the base of members that can participate in our volunteer opportunities. But what would you say really to any member that's listening right now that you would encourage them to get involved with the society?
I think my best piece of advice would be get educated. And by that, I mean, read what the society's publishing when it hits your inbox. I know today we all get too many emails, and it's easy to figure out which ones you think you're passionate about and hit the delete button on others. But I would really encourage any Ohio CPA to read into what's going on. And if you read those things and don't become passionate about what's going on in your state and what the society is driving, then I'd actually ask you if you were passionate about being a CPA, because that's really what has kept me just adamantly involved.
Yeah, and I mean, Owen, I get it. Like we do send out a lot of emails. I'm a little bit biased because we do the leg up on Sunday nights, which is our issues. If you're a member that's not receiving that, please let us know. That goes out Sunday evenings around 7 o'clock. And then our CPA takeaways also goes out on Thursdays around noon. But we always have articles every single week. There's usually always at least one advocacy article. And then we have a lot of CPE opportunities as well to get educated on some of the issues. So Jessie, so what would you say to encourage a member to get more involved?
Yeah, I would echo what Owen said. If you look at the top issues that are on the OSCPA's legislative and regulatory agenda that you guys are driving on our behalf, it's impressive, but it's diverse. So in my opinion, there is something, probably quite a few things, on the agenda that are important to everyone hearing this today. Your involvement is what drives the initiatives and priorities of the OSCPA and ultimately impacts the profession. Plus, it just feels good to give back and make a real difference for our businesses, our firms, our clients, the state of business in Ohio in general, and the future of our accounting profession. For example, just this year, because of OSCPA-driven legislation, CPA candidates can start taking the CPA exam as soon as they have secured a bachelor's degree or its equivalent, about 120 semester hours. So this potentially can now speed up when they can ultimately be licensed and giving them some incentives to stay here in Ohio. And as a faculty member at Youngstown State University, this is huge for my students and the future of the profession.
Yeah, thanks, Jessie. And then lastly, Adam, I mean, I know you've encouraged some members to actually join the SALT committee. So I know that you've done it. So give us your line that you say to them when your elevator speech, or so to speak.
I just give them, $10 bill and then they join. No, just kidding. And I would echo both Owen and Jessie. And really, we all became CPAs for a reason. We all have our different reasons why we went through everything. And then we all have our reasons why we joined the OSCPA. There's a lot of issues that are out there that do impact our profession. And what's a better way to look at those issues and discover those issues than being a driver and understanding the ability of the OSCPA to have such an impact. As Jessie noted, just the change in the hours. I mean, that was a way for CPAs to come back to Ohio, where people were testing in other states, and then they'd have to go back and transfer their license in. So is a way to eliminate any barriers towards the profession or just learn about the profession in more detail. That's why you would get involved and learning about the issues that do impact our state as well, and your business or your client's business, and figuring out how all of those are in interplay together. Then at the end of the day comes together with volunteering at the Ohio Society.
Yeah, and thanks, Adam. And one of the things that I would say too is volunteering isn't always necessarily joining one of these committees or testifying at the State House. I mean, sometimes, honestly, it's just picking up the phone and calling us if you have an issue. Because, I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard from members that when they call me, they're the first member I've heard about an issue from, and they say, oh, you're probably hearing from a ton of members about this. And I said, no, you're actually the first one that's brought this issue to my attention. And so I think kind of the assumption there is, well, somebody else is going to do it. Well, if somebody else might not be doing it. And so, and this kind of leads into my next question is what is the time commitment of the volunteer opportunity?
As you noted, it does depend on how much you want to get out of it, really. And just to go back to one of the items that we talked about early last fall was the BWC refunds. And at that point, I was having clients that were asking me about the taxability of those for CAT purposes, and I didn't really have a good answer because it wasn't clear. So I called Greg and said, "Hey, Greg, have you heard about this issue?" And lo and behold, a couple of days later, some of the regulatory agencies were calling him at that point. So it doesn't take much time to pick up the phone if you see an issue. As you get to some of the committees, it does take a little bit more time. I think we have quarterly meetings that are typically about 2 to 3 hours, just with preparation for those meetings, along with actually attending. It used to be a little bit longer, as you noted, when pre-COVID, when you had to drive in for the day, and it would take up a little bit more time. But just with the hybrid model, it does cut down on your time. On some of the other CPE events, when you do go volunteer and you speak at one of the events, usually that it doesn't take too long for you to actually present.
Yeah, I agree. It's always been a very mutually beneficial arrangement every time that I spend time with the Ohio Society. So that's one really great part about this organization. But I think it's flexible depending on how much time you have or are available to give. I've done letter writing for certain initiatives that's taken less than 10 minutes to do. I know you guys utilize some very cool letter writing technology that makes it really easy for us to contact, senators or and push for certain issues. And less than 10 minutes, that's awesome. You could do that while you're eating your lunch. And so it can be very little or more involved depending on your schedule.
You get out of it what you put into it, and it's flexible. And I will just simply round that conversation out with, I think if you have a set amount of time that you are willing to put in, the society will find something for you. And if you want to get as much out of it as you can, working your way up to executive board member is possible for most, if not all. And that might be a little more time commitment. I don't know how it's changed as of recent, but those were periodic board meetings that took up to a day. I think every other month or quarterly, I can't remember anymore, and an annual retreat. And that's probably the height of involvement. But whatever you're looking for, they'll find a spot for you.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. And then, like I said, we'll start you out with the last round robin here. And the last question that I have, but any concluding thoughts that you have, you can finish up with as well. But what surprised you most about getting involved with OSCPA?
I think as I mentioned earlier, how much you guys are doing. It's mind-boggling. And it's even mind-boggling even if you just think about it down to just advocacy, how much is going on, how much you and Barb and others are moving legislative action forward in this state. It's so surprising if you take a step back and really think about all the things that the society is getting their hands on. From the foundation. Without getting involved, you have no idea DE&I initiatives and recruiting to the profession that the foundation is working on. There's just so much going on inside the society that until you get involved, it's easy to overlook or easy to assume. It's just a networking group. Those things are so far from the truth. Get involved, and you won't want to leave. I can say that much.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Owen and Jessie.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing that I guess I would highlight is that all of the people are great at the OSCPA. And I feel like that rarely happens where you find an organization and you're like, yeah, I really think everybody is top talent. The OSCPA just has top talent. And the more involved I get, the more impressed I am by their team and how much they accomplish for the profession, from pipeline to student engagement to young CPA opportunities, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And then, of course, relevant to today's topic, all that's accomplished in the legislative and regulatory space. It's really incredible. And I'm grateful for all that Barb Benton and you, Greg, do to ensure our interests are well protected. And that makes it kind of super easy, I think, for members to want to get involved and give back. When I volunteer, I always feel productive and valuable, and that I was able to make a meaningful contribution because the OSCPA comes prepared and ready to go, which makes a huge difference for volunteers. And there are so many areas that members can get involved in. I know Owen touched on a few of these, Young CPA Committee, the Women's Initiatives Groups, student initiatives, the OSCPA Special Interest Sections, are getting plugged into this legislative scene. There's truly something for everyone. And I would encourage everyone to engage in advocacy issues that are important to them and see how their contribution really can make a difference.
We would not be able to do what we do through unless you guys participated. And so I guess that's kind of teeing it up for Adam to bring us home here. But what are your final thoughts on what surprised you the most about getting involved, Adam?
I would say two aspects, and they've both been touched on it, and really just starting out with just the people and the number of people that make up at the society and all of the activities that the society does and the different areas that they touch and all of whether it's students issues or whether it's regulatory issues for the profession or whether it's tax issues, just the breadth of issues that are dealt with by the Ohio Society. That was the first surprising part. But then just after you get to know a lot of the people that work at the Ohio Society or other volunteers, just how good everybody gets along and just everybody wants something better for the profession, and being able to do that does make you feel good to give back and give your time. And it is beneficial to be able to say, I'm an Ohio Society CPA's volunteer.